Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let me perhaps start from congratulating our friends at TERI for an event, in my view, wonderfully pulled off. I think it's been 3 days of top quality experts participating in very well designed panels of a very intense substantive agenda. From what I hear, and I've attended 4 or 5 sessions, but from what I hear from others, and there were many of my UN colleagues that either participated or attended or moderated some of the sessions, that it went impeccably well. So congratulations to both of you, congratulations to the team, congratulations also to the Indian government that I know very much supported what you were trying to do and do that every year. I think one perhaps of the most important messages that not only events like this, but the whole philosophy of sustainable human development and the Sustainable Development Goals bring, and which I never tire to emphasize, is the interconnectedness of this agenda. I think over the last 3 days, you have seen the number and the complexity of the panels that you've all attended. And they ranged from water to energy to the circular economy to development issues to policies to private sector innovations and ideas. And this is where the complexity but also the hope of the Sustainable Development Agenda lies. I am frequently struck by how both in government and in business circles, we believe that there's a magic bullet for every problem. And you regularly hear the flair of the month or of the year of somebody coming out and saying, well, renewables will solve all our problems, or electric cars will solve all our problems, or this will solve. And the simple truth of the matter is that no matter how much we're excited by technology and innovation, which for the first time, perhaps, in human history, proves to us that there are solutions to all of our problems. The story here is that not one single one of them will solve all of them. And therein lies the complexity of what governments today need to face and need to do. At the heart of the Sustainable Development Agenda lies the whole government approach. And I think even in the last 2 panels, as most of you were here in the audience, it became quite evident that not one single ministry of department has the control over water. The political establishment needs to buy into this. Intergovernmental, regional, cross-border negotiations need to be had. 22 ministries get involved in one way or another, either the supply or in the demand and consumption of water. And the same goes for every issue, no matter which one we touch. I remind you that a year ago when the big drought hit India and 12 states were suffering from that drought, I think it was one of the first times that under the Prime Minister's leadership, a mini cabinet was gotten together and 6 or 7 ministries came together in a weekly situational emergency room discussion to attack the issues of the drought and make sure that the effects are felt not as terribly by all the populations affected. And here's perhaps a couple of words on India, the country where I'm privileged to serve and at this particular moment in history and time. We in the UN firmly believe that India is not only the biggest democracy in the world, not only the biggest country by population size, not only the fastest deploying renewable energy country or anything else. It is also a laboratory in many ways for the development solutions of tomorrow that are being born in India today. And I think the fact that this summit is held every year in Delhi for now, AJ, how many years? 18, almost 20 years. It is repeatedly held in Delhi, and I wish it another 20 years, or certainly until the end of the 2030 agenda, which hopefully will be successfully delivered. But the fact that this summit happens here is testimony to the fact that India matters. I'm not going to go as far as to say that India should be responsible for the Sustainable Development Agenda, as Jeffrey Sachs kind of started this 3-day discussion in his opening speech. But what I will say is India is in a unique position because it's a unique mix of circumstances that allow it to lead intellectually, pragmatically, practically. Why? Well, because India's level of development is still low middle income. And you've just graduated to a low middle income status last year, according to UN and World Bank methodology. Secondly, it is the biggest democracy in the world, and by the end of the 2030 agenda, may have 1.5 billion people on a territory that is comparatively small for that size of the population. Thirdly, it's an increasingly liberal economy, where a lot of the traditional creativity and initiative of the Indian people is being released, and people are allowed to make innovations, allowed to businesses to succeed, allowed to grow as fast as they want. And we are constantly seeing, picking up, and documenting incredible innovations that are low cost, fast deploying, easily scalable, and where India perhaps offers a solution for other countries that may not have the market size that India has, or the democracy that India had, or the financial means that India can access. And I will tell you from my own everyday experience, every week and every month, I get calls from a Ghana, from an Ethiopia, from a Lima, from many other countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, who are saying, excuse me, what is this thing that you guys did in India? Meaning not us UN, you guys, but the Indian guys. What is it that they did that is so interesting? How the hell did they get 1 billion people onto a biometric card? How the hell did they manage to deploy, 20 gigawatts in, or almost 20 gigawatts in solar and almost 30 in wind? How did that happen in 3 years or 5 years or 6 years? What is the secret? And we are, together with friends and colleagues, including with specialists in TERI and others, we are looking together at some of these things and trying to figure out what is the magic formula. What happened here that gives hope and courage to others across the world that we may not be a rich country. We may not have the financial means or the level of living that a California has. But perhaps it is because of those restrictions that we can create, we can innovate, we can deploy, and we can solve one by one of the problems and challenges that we have in our development trajectory as the years go by. Frankly, India does not have a choice. My country, Russia, or Canada, or perhaps the United States, have a choice. Because they have a huge territory, they have immense water resources, immense extractive potential for raw materials, timber, and God knows what. Unfortunately, India is not graced by that amount of resources, certainly not for the population and the economy it has. But it's interesting to think back and look at history, the countries that made the biggest innovation and quality of life breakthroughs weren't actually the ones that had it all. If you remember Japan, destroyed after Second World War, island state with a big population for that island, for the size of those islands, that doesn't have the materials that most people need for the development of a modern economy. And look at the levels of quality of life and innovation and technology that they have achieved in a relatively short period of time after Second World War. Look at Korea, a relatively small peninsular country. Again, does not have the resources or the financial, or didn't have at that time, the financial means and capabilities, emerged from a dictatorship. And how quickly that happened. So the point that I'm making is we are, in the UN, certainly watching India with a magnifying glass, because not only does India represent 50%, 30 to 60, right? But the average is somewhere between 40 and 50 of the entire SDG agenda, whether you take poverty or energy or water or whatever. But India also has the incredible potential to come up with the answers and the solutions. Because the solutions of the North, and we've had wonderful presentations in these panels from, wonderful innovative experience in Denmark and in Sweden and in France and in Germany and the United States and in Colorado just now, how problems are solved. And we can take inspiration for a lot of those examples and a lot of those intentions and policy frameworks and incentive frameworks and anything else. But a lot of the technology applied in the North is Northern technology, which is, by definition, very expensive. But India is coming up with answers on solutions that are 1/10 of the cost and hence are much more scalable. Let me finish by just a comical note. When I travel to be with my family in Europe and UK or in North America, and I go into a corner store and I see the price of a LED bulb in that corner store in the US, I start laughing hilariously. And usually the saleswoman at the cash register looks at me and says, "What are you laughing about?" I said, "This is about 10 times more expensive than I can buy it in India." So I think in closing my remarks to you at the end of this wonderful 3-day summit, I think innovate, think, create. Let's take the best the world has to offer, but let's come out, as always, with our own answers here in India that then are applicable, transportable, exportable to the rest of the world. Because we only have a limited number of years before some of these changes become irreversible. And I think India is already playing, but should play an even more intellectual leading role in this whole agenda. So thank you all. Thank you to the organizers. It was a privilege to collaborate on this together, and I hope for many years more of collaboration between the UN and TERI and India on all of these matters. And I'm glad all of you were here for these 3 days, and thank you very much.